Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Samantha Dean.
Just don't look directly into the light.
Good evening. FBI figures show that rape was up an alarming 11% last year. This evening on Woman, we're going to be discussing the topic of rape and what you can do to prevent it. Our guests tonight are Jan Peterson, who is a psychotherapist and a community organizer in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and B.J. Michelson, who is Director of Personnel of the Anti-Poverty Program in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. They are both members of the New York Radical Feminists, and they both participated in the first Rape Speak Out in New York City. If you rape a woman and you steal her television set, what can they get you for in New York City?
In New York City, they would get you for theft.
And that's it.
And that's it. There is much more concern about what happens with people's property than what is happening to women.
Well, this has become a very famous quote since the New York Times article a short while ago. In your experience, through your speak-outs, have you found many instances of this actually happening?
I would say that in the speak-outs, what we found out is that most women generally were treated quite insensitively by the police and found that the law was not established to protect them in regards to rape. That if they were one of the few that were brave enough to go in and to the police station and say that they were raped and the person was caught, that inevitably the person did not go to jail for the crime of rape. Because in New York, you have to have a witness, and there's very few people that have a witness when they're being raped.
Speaking about society or the states at large, what is it that will allow such a phenomena as rape to exist, do you think?
I believe one could begin from the very beginning with the way that we're taught to exist, to live, whether we're little boys or little girls. It's the idea of the little boy being the aggressive, the doer, the person who gets out into the trees and hangs from the limbs and that sort of thing and gets muddy and no, that's fine, that's cool. That's getting them into the active role that they're going to be growing up to. The ultimate goal of being the provider for the family, the doer, the go out and kill the animals, right, and bring them home for the kids to eat. Type of idea, if you want to go to the hunting society. It's the fact that it's built in the minds of all of us, whether we're men or women, how it is that we are expected to act.
And conversely, a woman is brainwashed to feel that she is going to be the victim, and so she acts out this passive...
Yeah, what's very interesting is that when we had the speak out on rape in New York, we found out, with one exception of all the women that testified about being raped, that it never dawned on the women that were there that they could react or they could do something about it. There were situations, one woman talked about being raped in her apartment where she knew right behind her head there was a bottle, and she could have taken that bottle and hit the raper over the head, and she was so conditioned of not hurting the person that she froze and could not deal with it, and yet that was on her mind. And there was one woman that did react back, and the attacker was so surprised that he ran away. But inevitably, and that was the most amazing thing I think that we found out, was the passivity that had been built into us that we should not fight back or even scream.
So you would say perhaps that rape is like the culmination of the male-female power relationship taken to its extreme, right? Another thing that baffles me is the intolerance of society towards somebody who's been raped. I mean, how many times do you hear it say, oh, well, she must have provoked him, she must have enticed him in some way, you know, thereby denying the fact that rape has ensued. How do you account for this?
Well, it's a number one fact in today's society that rape is really the victimless crime, that it's always the alleged victim, you see, in the quotation marks, which isn't so joking. It's really true that it's where in society in America you have to be proven guilty to be convicted for the crime. A woman says that she's been raped, and if for one small reason she might have known the person or have seen the man in her neighborhood or any kind of recognition of the man, it's almost against the out of the books. You can't convict that man because there must be some sort of collusion going on between the two of them. And the woman is trying to get back at the man for some reason or another, like a spiteful date situation. And I'm going to get that man and sig the police on him. But that's so
Well,
very
why would
rare.
she use rape? Why wouldn't she use burglary or any other crime? I mean, why would she use rape?
Well, I don't believe that she would necessarily.
No,
out of
but why do
spite.
the law enforcers believe that, I mean, the one applies to rape, whereas it doesn't apply to
Well,
anything else?
I think there's the idea that somehow men are allowed to have sexual feelings. It's the women that are the ones that are much more in control of their sexuality, so that if a man does come onto a woman, somehow she has done something to bring out his sexuality. I mean, like it's a fact that it's acceptable if a man is married to have affairs outside of marriage, where a wife, it's considered, you know, it's a very shocking kind of thing. And it's been built in so much that we're talking about it, that if a woman wears a short skirt and she gets raped, it's because she wore the short skirt. Or if she
Incites them.
if she looks directly at a man walking down the street, it's almost the idea that she must have showed something on her face that registered a come on to him in some way, or he would not pursue her. That that she emanates something, and many women believe this. Because they've heard it so often that indeed when they are raped, they think, my God, maybe I was doing something at the time. And it's one of those kind of so unknown things, because women kept it inside, because it was, for a woman to be raped, it was almost like a blot on her morality. She was looked at in question. In fact, you always see in the paper, they'll keep the name out because of the stigma of what it means to be raped. Not the rapist's name may be in, and that is not as awful as being the person that has been raped, because she's looked at to blame, and so she keeps it inside. It's generally a secret. She doesn't even tell her friends. So she goes through life thinking about, maybe I did do something. How do I know if I didn't?
Yeah, Samantha, excuse me.
Yes.
You brought up the fact that there was an 11% increase in rape reported in New York State over the last year. And I believe that it's not that there's so much more rape going on. I know Women's Liberation would like to think that they're out doing so many things. We're out doing so many things that we're making them very angry at us, and they're getting back at us. I don't think it's that there are more rapes, actually, but there are now, through the rape squads that we have in New York City, where women can go to other women that have been raped and have the ability to empathize with that problem and advise them how to go about reporting it and that sort of thing. That it's a much more free atmosphere than it's ever been to go and say, this has happened to me. And it's a very political statement. This has happened to me, and I want the laws to be changed to the point where the man is going to be convicted. In 1969, there was a study about rapes, and there were some 600 in New York State that had been reported. And then it went down and down and down to the point where there was one out of those 600 that had been reported, and had gotten through the courts to a certain stop, and then were stopped and got to another spot. One person was convicted of the crime. In New York State, in 1969 this was.
That's incredible. I just want to make one correction. It wasn't a New York State statistic, that FBI. 11%, it was nationwide. You mentioned short skirts a while ago. Is there any one type of woman, be it a young woman, a small woman, or whatever, a woman who might look defenseless, that is more of a prime target to a rapist than any other?
They found out that a rape victim could be anybody from a 3-year-old female child to, what was it? What was
92.
a 92-year-old woman that was raped recently. And it's also is that 72% of the rapes, or 71% of the rapes, are premeditated. It's not the spontaneous, emotional moment that creates a rape, which was one of the thoughts that has often been perpetuated.
Are they usually committed under the effects of alcohol or not?
Well, if they're premeditated, we found out that it has nothing to do with the effects of alcohol or anything else. In fact, they're also finding out that a rapist is not somebody that is insane or has any particular kind of mental problem. It could be anybody. Oftentimes, it could be a boyfriend, it could be somebody that the woman knows, or it could be a stranger, but that the psychological makeup of the male that is involved in rape is not any different from any other male.
Yeah, do you have you done any studies on what the psychological factors are that lead a man to brutalize a woman to this extent? I mean, I've read some theories, for instance, that it's men who feel that they are sexually inadequate or that harbor some deep hate towards their mothers and therefore they're taking it out on female society at large. Do you think there's anything in this? Or?
Well, there was a study run in a prison, and it seemed that there wasn't any difference in the entire psychological, how do you call it, profile, let's say, of the inmates from in differentiating the rapist criminals from the average criminals. I don't know how much of a cross-section of mankind this is necessarily, but this was one that was done. I believe that, do you know any study about the...
Well, I think they found out even within the prison where there's been rape on other men in prison that it had to do with power. It had to do with people that wanted to prove or wanted to be able to show that they were more powerful than somebody else. It was always the weaker, smaller guy that was picked on, and that there is an attitude. I think there is an attitude by men, obviously, that women are weaker and are kind of available. I mean, it is a fact that I think it's that we almost have the greatest protection racket going, is that a woman does not feel safe unless she is walking down the street with a male to protect her from other men, and that it's common knowledge that any single woman walking down the street, whether she's Jacqueline Kennedy or she lives in a poor neighborhood, is open as a target to either be harassed by men verbally, or somebody might come up and touch you. Most women have had this kind of experience, and it is an attitude of visibly showing power. So we would have to imagine that psychologically, that men that are involved in rape, it is for a reason that they have to prove themselves to feel as adequate males. And the kind of pressure that is put on men is an incredible amount of pressure. I mean, to feel as an adequate male, I mean, you have to be so powerful, you have to never show your feelings, you can never cry, you have to be aggressive, you have to bring in the money, you have to be successful, and we have to empathize with that. And that until we begin to change some of that role differentiation, until we can allow men to have outlets and to be softer and to be more, to show their feelings and to not have to be the top and the aggressor, we are going to have situations like rape existing. And until women begin to find out that rape, or even handling men on the street in general, which is to speak back when somebody speaks to them on the street, or to do something, to not play the very passive role, we are going to have this problem. And I think a case in point is when the 7 nurses were raped and killed by one man in Chicago because they were taught to be passive.
All right, well, you say women shouldn't play this passive role.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, what can women do to protect themselves against the possibility, the threat of rape?
But there's a number of things that have been talked about. One is that just women speaking out, like the Rape Speak Out and the rape conference that we had. What that did is that now women are more likely to go in and report the crime. I think that in New York City, the reason that the police department has now set up a special bureau of women that are handling rape crimes is because of the fact that women have begun to go in. We are saying that this is a crime. We are demanding legislation change and demanding new laws. I think that's the beginning.
Yes, I think in something like 20 cities over the country, there are organizations like this, rape squads, where you can dial a number. I think in Washington it's 333-RAPE, and you get like a 24-hour service counseling information, where to go, what to do, and so on. But practically speaking, what can the woman herself do? I mean, do you recommend taking up karate, jiu-jitsu, or any of these things?
Some sort of knowledge of self-defense. I mean, intense karate is very much of a disciplined type of activity, and it takes an enormous amount of time out of your life. And if you don't have that time, at least some sort of knowledge. I know that when I walk down the street, I've never been raped or attacked physically, because I have a feeling, I have it so strong in me that there's no man could ever hurt me, because I have black belt written right here on my forehead. And I can do all the noises and the things of a karate person. But I think that what Jan was saying earlier about how we have to live up to our sex roles, and eventually someday we'll be able to calm down and men don't have to be so aggressive and strong all the time, that we can empathize with them. I can maybe try desperately to sympathize. Empathizing is impossible. I believe that that's New York radical feminists. We have a concept that men can't come to our consciousness-raising groups, that men can't be involved in those things, because we have to get ourselves together. And this is along with rape. We have to get our minds to the position where we're not those passive creatures that we've been told all our lives, that we do have an enormous amount of strength. And one of the most important things is that we can really yell, which is something that we're told not to. We see movies like, I shouldn't even mention names.
Oh,
movies.
that's all right.
Clockwork Orange, which was the most incredible movie I've ever seen, where a woman stood up and said, "Get out of my house now. I don't want you here." And he was incensed by this, and the sirens were coming at him, and she was becoming almost physical with him and being aggressive at that point, and he killed her, which tells all of us across the nation that women don't do that sort of thing. You be calm, and maybe you'll escape with your life. What he does to you is one thing. And you'll be able to build yourself up into the point of, I can live, I can walk out the door sort of thing. But we've got to get to the point of having more confidence in our own strength and our own physical ability.
And most rapists, by the way, will run away if a woman does scream. That's a very important point that she was talking about. Not always. But one of the tactics also that has come up is that if you can connect in some way with the raper, if some way you can get the idea that you are a human being and begin talking to him and get him to see you as another human being, he can't block you out. You have to remember that nobody has raped somebody in the middle of Macy's. And there's specific reason, and this, goes to show you that the person is much more in control than we think.
But people have been raped in the middle of Kew Gardens, for instance, in Queens, haven't they?
That's usually late at night where the person was alone. And one of the tactics that's been said now is that since yelling help doesn't seem to bring about attention, you can yell fire. One of the other things that's happening is that we're putting out brighter lights in New York. And women are demanding these really bright lights, which almost make it look like daylight down the street.
Strobe light.
We're having consciousness raising with the police department. That helps. Many men did not value or understand what it meant to be raped. It's very hard for them to identify that, and so you'd go to the police department, and it'd almost be as bad going to the police department as it was going through the whole humiliation of being raped.
Yes.
And so conscious raising with police has helped change a lot of attitudes within the police department. It's a whole education process. So I think that some of these are methods, besides the jiu-jitsu or self-defense. If you do walk down and you do look like you know you can take care of yourself, that is true, that there is less chance.
So in some respects, I suppose women really are culpable themselves just by the attitude that they present. What do you think, for instance, about carrying little gadgets in your handbag like synthetic lemon juice and all this sort of thing? And do you think that we should be prepared for this kind of eventuality, or do you think this is taking it too far?
Well, among other things that I've given up in my life is purses. I have a rather hefty briefcase, which I mostly always carry along, and that itself would be just fine if it ever were to happen, you see. I know my mother worked in an area in Chicago at a hospital it was at one time Norwegian area and became pretty much of a slum area. And she carried the biggest purses and with a lot of heavy things in them. And that was for that exact purpose. She told me when I was a little kid that I carry this big purse to hit anybody who comes to rob me.
I think it's something that women can do. I think it's sad. I mean, I think it's sad that we have to always be on guard at all times, yet it does seem like there's going to have to be a process until a lot of attitudes are changed that we're going to have to react out. And unfortunately, I don't feel like I was being an aggressive person. I mean, I really don't like it that every time I walk down the street and walk through a group of construction workers or on Wall Street with the men down Wall Street, that when they say humiliating comments to me that I have to yell back. I mean, I would like to be let alone on the streets, but I think that there is a process that we have to go through or we won't see change on the streets. I think I've seen change a little bit already. I think men are a little bit more willing to recognize the privacy of women on the street, just a slight. And I think that it's because we've begun to react back, and because some women have fought, because some women do carry gadgets, you don't know necessarily now what a woman is going to do.
Right, right.
And that has helped a lot.
To talk about the psychological side effects, do you think long-term scarring is inevitable with rape, or do you think, like psychologists such as Bernard Oliver says, that you can escape if you've got the right mental attitude from being scarred for life?
It's when you speak about scarred, all I can think of is our friend in Chicago who had a knife at her throat and was told to not move. I'm going to rape you, sort of thing. You mean mentally scarred, like?
Yes.
Would you say she's mentally scarred?
I think not. I think not. I believe that Meryl has come through that beautifully.
I think that it's possible not to be mentally scarred, but it's again the kind of process that's set up, and that one of the things is to be able to have the consciousness raising or therapy or whatever, where a woman can get to the terms that she did not cause it. Most of the mental scarring came from the fact of it being a hidden secret that was kept inside, that couldn't be talked about, which is one of the problems that women have in general, the whole guilt, the
Now,
whole...
physically, when a woman is raped, what should she do, and what should she not do?
Well, I think that one of the first things that one is prone to do is get clean fast, get in a bathtub and maybe douche or whatever. And that, of course, would take the case right off the books, should you indeed report it, without any evidence, physical evidence. The fact is to, I think, really, is to be able to get in touch with the rape squad, if there's one in your city, and describe the case. Then perhaps, I know they would send women over and then call the police, because that can be almost worse than the rape itself, is the action with the police and having to describe everything. There's, you know, in the Rape Speak Out, a woman was talking about having been raped, called the police immediately. They came over and they questioned her for 5 hours. 5 hours. You don't ask somebody when their television's been taken, you know, right? All these details, and eventually getting to the point of, well, did you really enjoy it, sort of thing? Did you come, is a very big question. And then perhaps they'll be able to get to the hospital and be examined and possibly given a D and C immediately, if that's necessary. And I think that what Jan was saying earlier is the conscience raising and how beneficial this is. And I believe this is something that I never had before, was the ability. I was always a very good superficial talker with my friends, and let's have lunch sometime, and sort of thing. But with conscience raising, you get this, here were my experiences, this is what's happened to me, and you get to the point where that becomes a way of life. Consciousness raising, you just don't briefly go over incidents in your life, and you have someone, you have a feeling of super support with other women.
Which would get away from the guilt and anything else that could be caused by being raped.
Yeah.
And I think that the point is that it would be good to have some other woman or somebody go with you when you do call the police.
How about
I think
going
that
to
would help a lot.
doctor, a gynecologist, for instance, who could then perhaps testify on your behalf later on? Would this be good or not?
I think that's very important, because the whole case depends on that there is evidence of some sort. Unfortunately, there often isn't evidence in rape cases. And so therefore, if even the whole keeping your clothes the same way, showing that that your blouse is torn or something, any evidence, you should keep it. You know, when you bring the police in fact, even have, I suppose there would be pictures taken, anything else. Unfortunately, the biggest problem we're going to have is changing the laws.
Yes. Well, the way it stands today, rape is one of the hardest things to prove and requires, in many states, corroboration, right? Is it only sex crimes that require corroboration, other than perhaps perjury? Is this the only type of offence that does?
Which kind of...
Imagine all, people that you know, supposedly, or a bunch of people would actually stand around while this one person is doing this physical, violent rape on you.
Exactly.
You know, and that's so ridiculous. But that, again, is this protection thing, where we have to realize who it is that makes the laws. In this two-class society we have, men and women, who makes the laws, who enforces the laws, who judges the laws. And you find that you really don't have too many legs to stand on when you're in front of
Again, it's
the
attitude.
fellows.
I think that oftentimes because it is a male legislature and the courts are male, it's because, again, men don't see this crime as what it really is. And most of the laws are set up to protect the man. Again, you have to have a witness because there is the attitude that a woman really is going to go down to the police station and declare rape when indeed she wasn't raped. In fact, this came up oftentimes in the terms of the South, you know, where the black community right now is very worried about the fact that we're trying to take out the corroboration law because they're afraid that white women are going to say that black men have raped them, which the statistics right now show that rape is almost always, with the exception of 3%, of the same within the same racial group.
Do you think there would be any danger if this corroboration statute were eliminated from the books of women acting out their sexual fantasies, as has been suggested, and thereby incriminating men, particularly people in vulnerable positions, politicians and so on?
I think that this, again, is another myth. There are no statistics to show that that kind of thing would happen. You know, and with that would be like anything else. We could say somebody stole a TV then too. Why aren't women running down saying that that men are doing all these kinds of things?
Exactly.
To them?
This was a point I wanted to make earlier on. Exactly. Yes. Well, what are other evidences of proof of rape? For instance, everything's got to be corroborated. But if there is evidence of force or semen in the vagina, is this tantamount to proof, or not?
That isn't, because again, it may come up. Oftentimes the rapist is known. And the part of the whole questioning may be, did you know the person? If you knew the person, or if you were dressed in a certain way, or if you were doing any one of a number of things, they might say that, again, you enticed him. And it's a real difficult problem. And I think that's, again, why a rape squad or independent women's groups standing behind women on this issue will help a lot.
How about female police officers? Would you like to see them in the police precincts taking care of these kind of situations?
Well, that's happening right now in New York City. There's a number of women, I don't know the exact number of them, but there are more than there were before, who will be there specifically for reports of rape. That's their main object, their main job description sort of thing. I think that what you're saying, well, someone was saying, who was saying, about the support of the women. I know New York Radical Feminists, we have a coordinating council, and a woman came to tell us about having been accosted in the street. It was Sunday morning, and I'm sorry, and
Jan, BJ, I'm terribly sorry. I can't believe that half an hour's gone by, but I've got my last time view. Apparently it has gone by. Thank you very, very much, both of you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Good night from Woman.